All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samu?
Well, we've got Wheel of Time, which is good because we need a fun thing for today. Because as you can see, I am fresh from a funeral, as we talked about in a previous episode. Dr. Smith, uh, we'll pour one out for our homies, and I will miss the engaging conversations we've had. But whew, it's a rough time. As you think of time. I just had basically a month of my life taken away from me because some idiot wanted to rob me and drugged my stuff, and it messed me up for a while. If you really think about it, there's only like 360 more of those left.
Mm-hmm.
And to put it in perspective, if you had $360 in the bank, you would look at every dollar you spent. And I can't get that one back. So we'll uh we'll try to do better going forward. There's a good song, Tim McGraw, "Standing Room Only." That's the way this funeral was, standing room only. And that's the goal from here on out. When finally I go, there's no seats left.
That's what you hope for.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of, actually, I have absolutely no way to segue that because I forgot that the chapter we're on chapter 25, and I forgot that the first half of the chapter is actually Elida, or the first several pages of it.
Yeah, well, from Tarna's
Ugh.
perspective, and the first couple of read-throughs, I would always get, and again, this is where names, come on,
Mhm.
Jordan, you could have done a little better with names. Tarna and Teslin used to always get mixed up in my head, and we get both of them in this chapter.
Yeah.
So I was always thinking of the hag looking doobie doo when I would think of Tarna, but that was
Mhm.
Teslin, and Tarna is actually apparently an attractive red who likes dudes.
Just,
So
kind of scary looking because she has a very severe personality.
yeah, well, she
Um,
got she got the RBF pretty bad.
yeah, yeah. I don't have a ton of thoughts on these pages except that, um, and I didn't want to stopping in the middle of a chapter is always annoying, so I figured we'd just wait until this time. But it really connects with the couple of chapters from last time of the contrast between how Egwene does things and how she earns respect and how Elida demands respect. And that's why the tower is where it is, because from the beginning, and I have to think that was purposeful on the Black's part. Of it wasn't just that Elida presented an opportunity to bring down Sawan and break the tower in well, we say in two, but really in three, because Jordan went with the quote attributed to Benjamin Franklin about how about a third of the colonists were rebels, about a third were loyalists, and about a third just kind of sat it out and tried to be neutral. And that's about what is happening. Those are the numbers we get with the Aes Sedai at various times when they're talking about it, about who's where and who's in whose camp. That there seem to be about a third, because we reference the ones that are with the borderlanders, and those seem to be sitting it out. There seem to be a number who are sitting it out to see what happens.
Yeah, and it's amazing because you get insight on from somebody else who's in the tower on how Elida is handling things. And when you look at the crimes from Swan and her deposition, you almost wonder if there's like a glaring double standard based on how recent the events are and the fact that there is a rebellion going on, because Elida should have been ousted a long time ago. She's a tyrant. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's a tyrant. Everybody knows it. But we've got this looming rebellion that is coming towards us, so she keeps her position.
Well, and you see why, not only in these pages but in the previous, whenever it was, where Tarner was talking to Pavara and I forget the other red, about going to the Black Tower to bond Ashaman. And they say flat out that we cannot, that yes, Alida is a disaster, but we cannot allow her to be pulled down or step down or lose, because it's all about us. It's about the Reds. That
Hmm.
it has been too long since we had a Red Amarillan, and so we have to prop her up. So,
Well, not only that, the last time it happened was a disaster because she was the shortest lived Amirlin.
oh, the last Red?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And I believe the last Red was all the way back in, was it the Trilok Wars? No, maybe not. But that I remember there being a reference to a Red who, that's why the tower didn't come to help Manetheren, because the Amarillan was a Red and was jealous of the Queen of Manetheren,
Hmm.
who was, an Aes Sedai, presumably of the Green or something.
Yeah, I think she was green because they do make a point that she was very battle oriented.
Mhm.
Especially the way she went out. She nuked herself basically
Yeah.
to take it out. Which is I will save it for. Let me write this down for spoilers because we've talked about parallels.
Mm.
Yeah,
And other than that, the only thing that, um actually, I've made this comparison before, but I'm watching the World War II channel where they do it week by week as if it's happening in real time, and it's so at this point in the timeline, we've just had the Battle of the Bulge, and a massive offensive on the Eastern Front just kicked off, and this whole time Hitler has been living in this fantasy world of his own creation, of while generals around him are saying this won't work. The Ardennes offensive will not work and will lead to disaster. There's a massive Soviet force building up on the Eastern Front, and it's going to attack. And he just refuses to see anything because he has he has locked himself in such a tight dogmatic cage that he can't see anything else. And that's what we see with Elida, with kind of the close there of, well, of course Egwene is broken. She has to be. She couldn't be anything but. So I'm going to lord my victory uh, over these Ajah heads and have Egwene serve me dinner.
I think we could go back to since it's kind of relevant here since we started off with this, and I actually don't think it's an accident because we just finished in an Egwene chapter, and then we start a Mat chapter,
Hmm.
but we start with Elida,
Hmm.
where that could have been the end of the Egwene chapter, but it's the beginning of the Mat chapter.
That's a good point.
And so there's a clue in that, right? This has more to do with things going forward with the big picture than it does with Egwene herself. Uh, but we have a
I,
comment from last time
I wonder,
from
you say that, and that makes me wonder if part of the reason he did that was a clue about what's going to happen
Mhm.
soon here
Yeah,
with
again, we'll save that because of spoilers.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no and especially the point of view we get in the next chapter as
Yeah.
again, Jordan didn't do anything by accident. I mean, maybe he did some things by accident, but these big things, like starting a chapter with Elida that's a Mat chapter, is a big thing
Hmm.
because you think about flow and you think about predictability. It should have been the end of the Egwene chapter.
Hmm.
We get a view from the tower that's not.
And even though that Elida section is one, two, three, four, five and a half pages out of, an otherwise lengthy chapter. So it's a little less than half. And the chapter title is also Attending Elida. It has nothing to do with Mat, even
Hmm.
though
We
even
get the
though
dice.
the symbol is Mat.
Hmm.
So I do wonder if how much of that was on purpose, and how much was maybe just time crunch trying to get as much as he could into this last book. But I do think there may have been a kind of purposeful
I don't
clue
think it's
there.
a time crunch because that could have very easily been the end of the last chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the fact that it's a separate thing on its own, I think has a little clue in it. Now let's go to the comments since we sometimes do these at the beginning, and it's actually relevant here because we're going to go away from Elida and Egwene for quite
Hmm.
some time. But Scott says trying to pinpoint just why I dislike Egwene so much. What I've come up with is as a possibility is that she won't do what she should because she wants to protect the tower as an institution in all its faults and flaws. I would have been more decisive if it would have been more decisive if she let Brian fight the war he prepared for. I equate this to Eisenhower refusing to invade Normandy because some French non-combatants are likely to be killed. Egwene is trying to protect things that shouldn't be protected, so she won't make the big decisions she should. And this is about as close to hitting the nail on the
Mm.
head as you can get. And I almost commented under my regular YouTube to say that I might get us canceled because of this, and thank you very much because isn't this most women in leadership roles? Yeah, we want diversity, we want all of these things as we discuss in other parts of our podcast, but there is a weakness to women in leadership roles. Look at HR departments. Oh, you've offended this person or you've done this. Da, 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 da. We're trying to protect everybody's feelings. We're trying to protect everybody. And when you try to make everybody happy, you make nobody happy.
Hmm.
And that's exactly that. Again, this is as close to the nail on the head as you possibly can get because Egwene is trying to protect everything, and then she ends up protecting nothing.
No, that's a good point. And another example of did Jordan know this, you know, directly, or did he just intuit it from what he knows about human nature, which is, you know, something you've mentioned numerous times when we talk about sex differences is that women build coalitions. Women are much more group oriented. They're coalitional, whereas men form hierarchies. So that's a good thing because when it comes to, you know, team building and compromise and these things, that's where women excel. The problem is, I think the Eisenhower analogy is a great analogy because what Egwene is doing while she's prisoner is trying to build a coalition. She's trying to build a coalition within the tower and then bring that coalition together with the coalition that she's created. Except at some point, you have to bridge that very wide divide between the tower and the Saladar sisters. And at some point, someone needs to make a decision. And uh I think I may know more specifically what Scott is referring to here. So make a note on spoilers that along those lines, I think there's a great illustration of that fault of hers when the tower actually does come back together, because that I won't say it ruined it, but Egwene's attitude there brought down what was otherwise a magnificent triumphal climax to her story arc. The way she behaves there, um, and that's where, yeah, you Brian was telling you you're going to have to make a hard choices. People are going to die one way or another, and we need to make a decision because you can only put off a decision for so long before you actually start making it worse.
And there's a long history of there. Sometimes the female staying of the male hand has been beneficial, but we have to look at every case on an individual basis because just because that has happened in the past doesn't mean it's not the right decision to throw the punch.
Yeah. And it's not to say there aren't outliers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually see that. We see Brigitte in a very masculine role, playing a very masculine position, trying to tell Elaine, you're being a bee and you need to stop it, and this is what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Margaret Thatcher had bigger balls than any congressman today, you know. So there are outliers, but Egwene is being very feminine here.
Mm-hmm.
And segueing to the next half of the chapter, you see that starkly contrasted with Mat, because Mat's about to rejoin the band, and even before then he's in charge, he's in the lead here now that they're away from uh uh the menagerie, and he doesn't have to deal with all that. It's okay, I'm in charge, here's what we're doing. And that go jumps up to 11 when he rejoins the band and starts going into full general mode.
Well, I hope Harriet had a lot to do with this because I don't want it to be just Jordan intuiting what women do. But when we get a perspective from Tuan's point of view, this is the problem with the male versus female argument in leadership is one of the big differences is with Mat, he's very reactionary. He assesses the situation on a day-to-day basis. We see from Tuan's point of view here in a second that she thinks she had it all figured out.
That's a good point.
And that's actually a very female trait is you think you got it all figured out and now you're going to structure everything going forward. Well, the world is random. There is randomness to the world. And in
Hmm.
fact, I should have put it up, the Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, where she's very masculine in her thinking that you have to retrospectively look at everything as if it was a bet. Was this random or was this controllable? And that's a good mindset to have. That's actually the Mat book is Thinking in Bets.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay,
um
anything else on Elida before we move on? I just wanted to get the
nope.
Egwene, the comment about Egwene in while we were on that
Yeah,
subject.
now that we've made
Yeah.
the point of the contrast here, let's move into this Mat part. um I find it interesting, but I'm not exactly sure what the point was, unless this is another one of these signs and omens that Tuan is looking for on page 545, when the big fat black snake comes slithering out of the log and freaks everyone out. And Mat's the country boy. He says, "Leave it alone." As he says to Tuan, let's see, where is it? Yeah, down at the bottom of page 545, a strange man who lets poisonous serpents go, Tuan said. From the fellow's reaction, I assume a black lance is poisonous. Very, he told her, but snakes don't bite anything they can't eat unless they're threatened. So her reaction is interesting to me, and I'm wondering if I'm missing something here that Jordan is trying to say, because she's clearly intrigued by this, but then what happens next? Of, you may kiss me, toy.
Well, he described himself, first of all. He just wants to be left alone. But when you back him in a corner, he's the most
Mm,
dangerous man in this whole series. Uh, of course, it did annoy me. Sorry, Jordan, posthumously to nitpick at your work, but snakes are venomous. They're not poisonous.
yes, but that's colloquially the way people talk. So
I know, but still, they're venomous, not poisonous. It bites you, you get poisoned. That's venom. If you bite it and you get poisoned, that's poisonous. But
I would have been a little amused if Mat had corrected her on that, because
I know
he's the
I was
country
actually
kid.
I was reading this through last night again, and I was like, "Please, Jordan, let me have forgotten this." And you have Matt correct her, but no, it didn't. But no, but he described himself. Snakes don't bite anything they can't eat unless they're threatened, and that's Matt to a T. He's live and let live, but I mean, look at his interactions with the Golem, and look at his interactions with Cooladin. He was just trying to be. And these things kept coming at him, so he
Mm.
struck. And a lot of people use the fox and all of this stuff with him, but he's actually more like the snake. He just wants to live and be left alone. The fox is actually actively trying to be, conniving and a predatory, whereas the snake just wants to live. It needs to eat, and
Even
it
when it's predatory, it's an ambush. It just sits there and waits.
yeah, exactly. Uh, but so she understands this, and I think she actually likes this, and so that's why she is. And we don't get. And actually, we could have gotten something from her point of view here in a little bit, but we didn't. on why that kind of puts
Mm.
her to the next level of their relationship.
Th Thinking about it out loud here, I wonder if one of, if not the main motivation for why she does this is she sees it as an example of his ability to be calm in the face of danger, to be calm when everyone else is freaking out.
I think that's part of it, but also it's there's a big dose of compassion in that.
Mm,
You know, it's easy to have compassion for the fuzzy bunny, but to have compassion for the venomous snake, that's a special skill. That's a special
yeah.
character trait. And I think she sees that.
Um, well, but then much like the cold-blooded snake herself,
Well, I
um,
was just going to say that because there's also probably a little bit in the back of her mind where she knows she's had people assassinated. She knows she's had people killed. She knows all of these things that are culturally right for her, but she knows deep down inside that she's living in a world that has a
that
lot wrong with it.
that's
And
a good
he and
point.
she knows deep down inside now he's going to judge her on the merits, not on how having to live in that world.
And we know from their interaction earlier, Satal and Mat, that Satal is on Mat's side here and is basically acting like a surrogate mother in trying to help this match happen. And you, just from what we have seen of their conversations, you you have to think that she's trying to make Tawan more human and see the humanity in others. And so I would think that she's working on the human part of this match, because in Tawan's mind, and as she said, and as Lewin Shipless has said, she's choosing a match for the Empire. You know, but I suspect Satal is also trying to remind her that she's a woman, that
Mhm.
she is a flesh and blood human being.
Well, she gets reminded she's a woman here in a second.
In a
Not by her
second,
outward reactions,
mhm,
but what we get in her mind here in a little bit that it did have an effect. Good job, Matt.
do I remind you of your sister? She asked in a dangerous tone. I love that dangerous tone. Yes, because she is. Or perhaps your mother. Somebody laughed. More than one somebody, in fact. Grimly Mat tapped the dottle from his pipe on the heel of his boot and stuffed the warm pipe in his coat pocket. He hung his hat back on the Ashendera. If she wanted a real kiss, and then he curls her toes. Um, when he finally released her, she stood there looking up at him and trying to catch her breath. So we know, because she had a physical reaction, that it was a doozy of a kiss for her as well, and yet she laid fingers against his cheek. I thought so, she said in a slow honey drawl. You're feverish. Some of your wounds must be infected. Yikes.
That's
Um,
called deflection, though.
it is, but I like the contrast there. That okay, this light is annoying me because it keeps flickering. So let's see if that did it. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it off because that's annoying me. But I like, son of a stupid piece of crap. This, oh dear, this lamp may be broken. I throw it out anyway. Um, the
It's the same brightness, so you might
well,
as well not
it's
have it on.
we had a nice clear day, not a cloud in the sky, and so the afternoon sun is giving me more lighting than these crappy lamps do anyway.
Yeah, same here. But we got to cover everything for this hard freeze we're about to have.
It's I was just looking at the forecast and it is 58 degrees high today here. It's going to be 23 as a high tomorrow.
70 degrees high here, and it's going to be in the 20s tomorrow. Yeah.
Um anyway, but then uh switching gears, um I like that she doesn't have time to boss him around. I kind of like that, that Jordan interrupts that so that, keep giving Mat a win here. of Harnan, you know, shouts that there are riders coming in, and here comes big fat Vannon, um, galloping up with Talmanes, and we find out that the band has been on its way to find Mat. Um, Something I hadn't thought about when I was rereading this chapter is that everybody kind of gets turned on their head here, because even the Aes Sedai, when Talmanes says that Egwene is still the Emerillin, Teslin, who's been out of it, has no idea what's going on and is, part of the tower, says, "What the heck are you talking about? Who are you talking about?" There was an accepted named Egwene. Um, and and so now her and Jolene are left going, "What?" Uh, all right. Do you have any more thoughts on this? Because it's the next chapter is, I think, where it really gets interesting.
Let's see. My
Um,
first note is page 560, so that is in the next chapter. Yeah.
yeah. So it's it's a fun jump back into Mat's storyline here. A quick catch up on what has happened since we left them, skedaddling away from the menagerie, and now a massive setup for what's about to happen, which is, holy cow, it's the band. I will say, I enjoy Jordan's ability to write Deus Ex Machina without making it feel like Deus Ex Machina, because every explanation that Talmanes gives is perfectly reasonable for why the band would have started moving south. But he has also incorporated this very blatant Deus Ex Machina system in the world itself, in the universe, with
Wait
the
a minute. I might be
pattern.
confusing two things in my head. You're saying Deus Ex Machina, but there's the movie Ex Machina. Ex
Yeah.
Machina is the AI robot woman.
So the Deus Ex Machina is uh it's basically the hand of God in a story. Is just stuff happens because, and
Okay.
there's not really an in-world explanation for it. It just happened to work out.
No,
So
Ex Machina
literally,
is an amazing movie about
I've
an
heard
AI
that,
robot woman.
I
Yeah,
haven't
and
gotten
it's
around to watching it.
yeah, it seems slow at times, but at the same time, you're just like the whole
Yeah.
you just watching because it's the deeper picture. The slow parts actually give you time to marinate
Hmm.
about the things that it's talking about. So Ex Machina is an amazing movie. I'm not as familiar with Deus Ex Machina. So
Okay, yeah. So I was trying to remember where it came from, and it comes from Greek dramas, Greek plays. That in a lot of Greek plays, a god would literally be lowered down to the stage to extricate the protagonist from a difficult situation.
ah
So, and if you've read the Iliad or Odyssey, which most of us had to read in high school, you see that where the gods are constantly intervening to help out Odysseus or whatever, and so that's where it comes from. But he Jordan does it in a way that still gives agency to the characters, because there was this feeling that the band had. So Matt's Tavarinness is pulling on them, but they still have to act on their own accord. They still have to get the job done. They still have to get there. There's no God being lowered down from the heavens to pick up the band and move them and say, "All right, now you band and Matt back together. Let's get on with the plot."
well, I had a note from Tuan's point of view where they're explaining Tabarin to her. It's a concept she didn't know from her
Oh, yeah,
own
yeah, yeah.
upbringing, which is, again, Tom is like, this is ironic because your founder, Arthur Hawkwing, was the greatest Tabarin to ever live. And
Hmm.
you have nothing of this in your lore. And she's just like, oh, you crazy Randlanders with your superstitions, but then an owl hoots and she's like, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's
So on to the next chapter. The next chapter is great because it is from Tawan's point of view. And so you're getting to see from the outside looking in Mat being, General Mat, as well as get her, feelings and impressions on that. And then along with the explanations and the talks that, Tom is giving to explain things. And then who is it Estine that comes up to also try and explain things while Mat is busy, you know,
uh
figuring out what they're doing.
no, Estine is the one that was left in charge with the ones that were left in Morandi.
Mm.
So it is, oh gosh, Colonies plus, oh gosh, the tall one, the tall
Yeah,
skinny
I'm trying
one.
to remember who it is when they ride into camp.
Yeah, there's three of them. A Dorian and
Oh yeah, I th
Carloman.
yeah, I think it's a Dorian who is hanging out with Tawan to offer, you know, answer any questions while Mat's busy. All right, so
Would it be Estienne? Estan? Because it would be like a Spanish pronunciation
yeah, that's true.
because he's from Tyr. So Estan.
Um, my big takeaway and one of the reasons I love this first part of this chapter with Tawan's point of view is that uh you actually get to see the thought process in her head of, you know, um woman courting, woman trying to figure out if because they're basically betrothed, and Tawan is trying to figure out if she's going to go through with the wedding ceremony. Because since Mat has done the first half of the wedding ceremony, they're basically betrothed, and she's trying to figure out um who this man really is, and she is intrigued and attracted by him and attracted to him, but she's also trying to figure out this is a potential threat to my empire. And I have to get a hold of these, fancy mechanisms that are these crossbow mechanisms. I have to figure out who this band is and how they operate. I have to gather intelligence right alongside without missing a beat with the, you know, evaluation of Mat as a person. And to your point, you see that her her expectations have been completely turned on their head because
Hmm.
she thought she knew who Toy was. I mean, that's why she keeps calling him Toy. Not just to maintain
Yeah,
that power dynamic.
even the thought process in her own head, she says he seemed in place as Tylen's pet,
Yes,
but
that's
also
it.
he seemed in place as the menagerie, and now he seems in place as because Mat is he is again. I think the parallel to Ulysses S. Grant was huge because the big difference between Grant and other generals was Grant didn't pick the battlefield, he made the battlefield work for him. And Mat doesn't pick where he's at in the world, he makes where he is in the world work for him.
That's another great analogy, because going back to the Black Lance, one of the things that was noted about Grant is, and I believe the way Shelby Foote put it is he had 3 in the morning courage, that you could wake him up at 3 in the morning and tell him that his flank has just been turned and he would be cool as the other side of the pillow. So it didn't matter what was going on, he wasn't going to um he wasn't going to lose his cool. He wasn't going to lose his head. Uh and I'd forgotten about the scene there, but I love that, and it's such a great encapsulation of who this character is and has been for this, 10 book ride that we've been on, of all the different things that Mat has done. And that's a great way of putting it, is it doesn't matter where he was from where we saw him really when he first kind of started to rise as his own character, because as we've said before, really early on he gets corrupted by the dagger, and all through book 2 he's still having to deal with that. So he's not fully himself until book 3. We don't really get to see who Mat is until the Dragon Reborn, in the White Tower, and we see him, what he's doing in the White Tower, and then his escape from the White Tower. And in every one of those instances that he's in, whether it's in the tavern gambling, or whether it's dealing with the captain of the riverboat, or storm scaling the wall of the Stone of Tyr to go rescue his friends, he is perfectly at home in every one of those situations.
Yeah, and he's the everyman hero. So this is, I think, why I identify it, because I'll make a Marvel reference. Why I identify with Mat more than Perrin and Rand is, if you really think about it, Rand is like Superman, Perrin is Thor, but Mat's like Daredevil, man. He's just a dude trying to get on with his day, but things keep coming at him, and he has to take the pain. And
Mm-hmm.
that's I've always loved those kind of heroes, the ones that they would rather be somewhere else, but they keep getting thrown into the fray, and they keep wanting to help people and help them, and just survive, you know,
What,
and
which is a funny contrast to the where is it, somewhere in here, where um he someone makes the point that he's planning a battle, um and then someone makes the point, well, that won't be enough. Oh yeah, here it is, 362, uh
562.
562. So this is the end of the Tawan section. Here is, um what is he doing? Tawan said, frowning. He can't think to sneak this many men out of Altara, even if he knows where every last soldier is. There are always patrols and sweeps by Rockin. Uh, Again, they took their time before answering. Perhaps you should try speaking very fast. um, we've seen no patrols in better than 300 miles, and no Rockin. Dorian said quietly. Uh, Raimon laughed again. If I know Mat, he's planning us a battle. The band of the Red Hand rides to battle again. It's been too long, if you ask me. So Lucia sniffed, and so did Mistress Anon. Tuan had to agree with him. A battle won't get you out of Altara, she said sharply. In that case, Talmanes said, he's planning us a war. So
Yeah, and I've
he
got a
doesn't
bookend
want
note on
to,
this.
but this is where he's at, and this is what it's going to take.
No, but we've got something even better for that. So let's get through the Perrin part. But let me talk about 560 Tuan's thoughts on Satal and on. Some might, Tuan, let it rest. Though she usually enjoyed her private conversations with the woman, Mistress Sanan argued against leashing Marathdaman, as might be expected, and even against keeping Davakal, of all things. Yet they were discussions rather than arguments, and Tuan had made her concede a few points. She hopes of bringing the woman around eventually, not today, though she wanted her mind focused on Toy. So I actually thought that was really cool, because we get an insight on Tuan, where when you have that kind of mind where you're willing to discuss things versus just argue over things, this is the mind that is actually allowing her to change her mind. We get from her perspective that she's still holding to some of these traditions, but actually I get the impression that Anan is pulling her around more than she's
Mm,
pulling Mistress Anan around. Because yeah, we do want the hope that, oh my gosh, we can't own people. Slavery is bad, right? The Jordan may be from Carolina, but he probably didn't agree with holding slaves, and having a plantation. So I this is a moment where Tuan is thinking she's doing the turning, but we can kind of actually get a hint that she might be being turned herself. And Satella Anan, we already know, is a badass woman who is capable of good conversation
mhm.
to kind of bring things around. She's very wise beyond uh her station in life, which was an innkeeper. Uh, so it was actually just a very nice moment for me in this chapter because we get an insight into Tuan there.
And then we go to Perrin.
Yeah, then we go to Perrin, but that's okay. We're gonna end on a high note because we go back to Mat after this.
Um, so we we see the my biggest takeaway from this section here, as they're putting the plan into motion and getting ready here in a few days, they're going to finally attack the Shido encampment, is this is why we didn't need the slog to be a slog. And you go back to, I think it was Crown of Swords, where you first made this point of um they reset Perrin and Fail, because at the end of no, I think maybe it's Path of Daggers, because at the beginning of A Crown of Swords, when they're coming back from Dumai's Well, Perrin is worried sick, and then Fail gives him some lip, and he just, lets her have it of, what the hell are you talking about? How dare you, woman? I was worried, near to sickness. If you were dead, I'd just lie on your grave and die myself. They'd kind of, I won't say fixed it. You never fixed it, but relationships do grow and you take steps along the way, and you're never done arguing, but there does come a point where you leave certain arguments behind. And yet they just kind of resettle that when they go off to Geldan, and Perrin is trying to, navigate dealing with Fail and Bearlane at the same time while accomplishing this mission. And this is another point in that of Perrin has already figured this stuff out. Why are we resetting him? Which is, in
Well,
this
also,
instance,
why are we resetting him? And I just brought up the map we found online. Where I've got the hand right now is about where Mat is. There's Malden.
mm, mm,
A lot of things would have been solved have had Perrin and Mat gotten
yeah.
together at this moment.
And I knew it was
Especially since
close,
Mat's
but
heading here, because this is where
yeah.
he's talking about pulling the stop from.
Yes.
And not only could he have pulled the stop, he could have had an ally with Kylie and Perrin. Everything would have been better.
Yeah.
Had
Yeah.
what is this? About 100 miles, maybe tops. This is like
And
from me to the other side of Houston. It's
and for a long time I thought that's in the first read, I thought that's where this was going. Because as Mat is heading north and we know where Perrin's at, so I kept thinking
well,
that
this
that's
this
what
is
was
this is the
happening here.
gap that Mat
Yeah.
is trying to draw soldiers from right here. And we get again a couple of leagues away. We get where Perrin is with a massive,
Mm.
massive army. Why this didn't this is actually a plot hole in this part of the story because the guy who was making the maps and had all the soldiers on it should have had the Shido on there as well because it's so freaking close.
Yeah. Um, the only thing I could think is that he doesn't he they for whatever reason they're not getting news from that part of
From
Altera or
Galden,
Gildan
yeah,
for, yeah,
yeah.
for whatever reason. Um, anyway, Perrin clearly wants to go with them. He wants to be in the uh uh stealth force that is moving in to hide into the town. I brain fart the name of the town.
Malden.
Um, Mal no, I thought Malden was where they get the supplies from.
No, they're going to Malden. That's why I
Okay.
brought it up on the map.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
No, this is where the battle is. That's why
yes, yes, yes.
you can't ignore the map maker not knowing where hundreds
It's a
of
good point.
thousands of Shido was.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So
Or I should say tens of thousands. It's somewhere around 100,000, I think. But I got a note from page 570, and this is actually in the direction that you're talking about. And it's Perrin's own neuroticism here, uh, to psychoanalyze him here. His thoughts on not going were about what the other generals would do
Mm.
in his absence. You know, he's saying, what's his face? Galeen would could handle everything, but he was more likely to lead a charge. And Arganda is more sensible, but he's so anxious about Alejandra that he might as well lead a charge. Da 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 da. He's projecting his own thoughts on these other generals
Well, I don't know about that because we've seen that with those two before.
a little bit, but at the same time, if they had orders and this was the best way to do it, you don't get that to that position in an army without having sense, right? And yeah, they were reactionary in a moment, but we've had weeks. What does he say? Like 40 something knots he's put in the
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
You know, we've got over a month of time for them to actually be brought about to their senses again. You know,
For the emotion to calm down and then them to
mm-hmm.
become calculating.
Yeah,
You know.
and you don't become the top general of two arm. At least one of the two would have sense, you
Hmm.
know. But Perrin is projecting his own anxiousness on their thoughts. He doesn't know what they'll do. They could have done the right thing.
No, but to his credit, where he is right, and this is again, he learned this back in book four. So why has he been acting kind of flaky since then? Is I'm the guy in charge. The book stops with me. If I am the leader, therefore I need to lead. So as much as I want to do this thing, I need to actually be leading. Anywho, uh, any other thoughts, or then it's onto a plain wooden box.
572. I wrote a note, the deal with the Dark One, World War II. What am I talking about here? 572. Oh, where he's kind of lamenting in his own
Yeah,
thoughts of he's talking to Grady,
yeah,
and Grady is talking about the Soldem and the Domine, excuse me. And yeah, this is what my thought on that was. It is a deal with the devil to work with the
hmm,
Shanshin here, and it's very reminiscent of us working with the Russians in World War II because we knew they were bad. We knew the
hmm.
Soviet Union was horrible, but we needed to take out Hitler.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to go down a dark rabbit hole, then you know, dwell on your Polak roots and how terribly the Allies treated Poland. Poland was the whole reason for the start of the war, and Poland just got completely screwed. You know,
Yeah, yeah. So good follow if anybody's out there. Luke Rudkowski. He's on Timcast a lot, but he's got his own wearechange.org is his organization. But he's a Polish refugee. His parents were Polish refugees. And so he's very anti-establishment for reasons. for for reasons that
yeah,
go to
yeah.
exactly what you were talking about. But yeah, he's a good independent journalist. A little bit conspiracy theory, even for me, which is pretty,
Mhm.
you have to be very, very far off for that to happen. But he's a good follow.
Yep. All right. So, Rand, I've accidentally said this several times when we weren't in spoiler talk because I keep forgetting that we haven't gotten here yet, and it's at the end of the book here, which is the confrontation with Simmerhosh.
Well, you're skipping a whole spot. We got Fail.
Oh yeah, there's a little section with Fail and Galena here at the end of this chapter, which I
Yeah,
don't
but
care about.
also, well, no, I do care about because I
Okay.
hate the Roland hate.
Ah,
Roland is a good dude, man.
yeah. Oh yes, because we have Roland trying to get Fail to play one of the Aiel kissing games.
Yeah, but he's just being charming. He's being protective and he's being charming. Those are I mean, it's James Bond traits.
Hmm.
This is what we used to put on a pedestal at one time, and Roland gets more hate than Gawain. How does that happen? Gawain's the
That
simp.
yes.
Roland's a good dude in a bad situation.
So I can understand to a certain degree, to a certain extent, where you would not like Roland because for me, and I know for others, an attached person is off limits, period. And especially a married person is off limits, period.
But he's
However,
also in a situation where her attachment is null and void in the situation she's in.
in their culture,
Mhm.
she's not married for a year and a day,
Well, no,
basically.
no, because they've actually put the limit that there is no limit on Wetland or
Well,
Guy Shan.
no,
So sh
yes, but even within the confines of his culture, he's used to a guy Shane is not whoever they were for a year and a day. They're a guy Shane, period. So from his perspective, he's not doing it because he may Roland, for all we know, may be one of those people who thinks, "Hey, you don't flirt with another man's woman." But again, to him, that's not who Fail is. She's guy Shane.
Mhm. Well,
Secondly,
not only that, there's the people that are complaining aren't because she's married. The
yes,
people that are complaining are
yes,
because of the power differential, right?
exactly.
It is the my boss is hitting on me kind of situation. But no, he saved her from the person who was going to rape her
Several times. He protects her
several
several
times.
times.
He is
While,
trying to use his own merits
mhm.
to get into her pants, which
While he has not gotten any reward yet, and she keeps telling him, "You're not going to get anything from me for this," but he keeps doing it. That
and not only
that
does he
is
keep
something.
doing it, what the feminists that keep complaining about this section keep ignoring is she's into it. We have her own thoughts that she says I wouldn't survive a kissing game with him
Hmm.
with my virtues intact because she knows she wants it. And that's the part they keep ignoring. She has these thoughts. And it's not direct. Jordan never says anything directly. It just says, she says, and I might have to play a kissing game, which I won't survive. Well, there you go. She knows she likes what Roland has to offer. And Roland has a lot of things that Perrin actually frustrates her about. Roland is very direct. He's very uh intense on how he's making his offers, where Perrin is always apologetic. And the apologetic Perrin is what pisses her off.
Hmm.
The traits of Roland that she loves are the things she wishes Perrin would do.
Yep. Um, and that is not a negative on her part. She's in a very difficult situation. She has been separated from her husband for over a month.
Well,
She's a
and
human
also
being.
had good luck. She had good luck that Roland took an interest in her.
I don't. This is where I say I can understand the hate to a degree, but not the hate. I can understand frustration, discomfort to a degree. But to me, this is like when people point out the failings of our founding fathers to say, see, they were all terrible and the founding of the country was terrible. No, to me, that makes them all the better. That they had all these failures, they had all these human failings, and yet look at what they did. To me, it is a point in her favor that Fail recognizes that there is this base level of attraction to Roland. And yet that is why she is so stubbornly resisting that I'm not going to put a single toe over the line because I know I would just jump over if I did that. So no, to me, that's to her credit that she sticks to, as she says, it sticks to her virtue. Just like it's to Roland's credit that no matter how many times she says no, no matter how many times she rebuffs him, he is still kind to her and protective of her.
To me, this is and I'm going to speak to both sides of the argument, the Roland hate and then your statements on you just don't talk to an attached woman or blah blah blah. this is where Jordan, I think, excels a lot, and it makes it a little deeper. And people kind of like, it's like the woman reading the romance novel. She's got that naughty thought in her head, but she wants it to be classy, is there's the ideal versus the human. And this is a very human moment. Roland is being a human. He's a guy. He is attracted to her. He has these feelings for her for whatever reasons in his own mind. Whether it's her physical attractiveness plus her spirit and all of these things. She is a human. And even though she is married to Perrin, he has these things that attract her. And she gets it. And she feels it. And we get that from inside her head, but also just from her actions. She's resisting it. And to her credit, like you said, she's resisting it, but it's there.
Mhm.
And I think that's what actually brings the hate on here is because people are uncomfortable with those kind of thoughts. People are uncomfortable with the fact that, oh my gosh, things aren't the perfect picture we want them to be. And it blows the utopian mind,
I,
is
I
what it
I
does.
also suspect that the whole situation makes people uncomfortable because we do know that several of the women in Fail's group are sleeping with their captors. But it's also clear they didn't, Roland's, brotherless, Roland's people, they didn't force themselves on them. Like it's clear that some of the Aiel are,
Hmm.
because they're the
Well,
Shido
because
are that
we
folk
get the
harm.
the moment where
Yeah.
Roland saves her from one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it's very transactional. They did it of their own accord, but it's very transactional. This is the situation we're in. This guy's not so bad, so I'm going to sleep with him to gain a level of protection and comfort that I otherwise wouldn't have. And there's no judgment on Fail's part against them. That's their choice and that's their way of dealing with this situation. To your point, there's the ideal and then there's the real world. And this is a very real world crappy situation. And
Yeah, and nobody
this is how
wants to
people are
put
dealing with it.
themselves in that situation in their mind.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
what would you do if you were a captor, a female captor of all of these people that really could care less if you died or not, except for this one
Mm-hmm.
person?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? Everybody would like to say, I would. It's the argument of, would you be the guard of the concentration camp?
Yes.
Everybody says, no, I
Of
wouldn't.
course not.
But the truth is, almost everybody would.
Yes.
And that's the uncomfortable truth that's being brought out here, that I think is what the hate is grounded in people's self-loathing of what they would become.
Yeah. Yes. That's a great way to put it. All right. So now, speaking of self-loathing, Rand.
Yeah. Yeah, so I had to get that out because it was just, I think it's the most important point to take from the
Hmm.
slog,
Yeah.
is that point.
Yeah. Um,
Uh
I don't really have any thoughts on this until the end.
well,
Um,
I've got a little bit because we've been talking about keeping track of
mhm,
Logain and Narishma,
mhm.
and we have a moment with both of them there,
Yes.
and they're interacting with each other. And Logain's a little ticked off that Narishma is acting like he's an equal. And so that was just another little pin in the trail we're trying to follow here.
Yeah, that's true. Even though they both have the sword and dragon pins, they're both of equal rank. But as far as Logain's concerned, he's older, more experienced. He's literally a freaking noble, so he's knows how to command and lead.
And he's
So
stronger in the power, even if it's
mhm,
slightly,
yeah,
it's
even if it's slightly, and Narishma being still a young man, that could surpass him at some point
yeah, well,
because of
yeah,
the way
because
men
because what they
grow.
say, they jump, they
Yeah,
jump in leaps and
they
bounds.
grow in
Yeah.
leaps and bounds. Fits and starts is the way Maris put it, I think. Uh, so there's with women, you can tell their potential just by feeling them up. Giggity. I mean, just by, being there and getting that sense of them. Uh, but with men, Maris makes the point, and I think we get this from men as well, that men don't know how strong they are going to be until they're done, until they're,
Hmm.
much more mature and they've stopped those jumps and it's okay, this is as powerful as I'm going to be. So there's no telling if or how much stronger Narishma could be than Logain. But for now, yeah, Logain doesn't like that because, if I have to be, if I have to be subordinate to the dragon, fine, but I'm number two, and not you, kid.
Hmm.
Um,
Looking up their strengths right now from the tea
so
book.
I like we get a nice bit of suspense, and then all hell breaks loose, and we get a very quick action scene that you know even though we don't see it because from our point of view as Rand, and Rand gets blown up quite literally, so he doesn't actually see a lot of what is going on. Jordan's very good at giving you a sense of what is going on, and I hadn't really thought of it before, but I think that is part of his combat experience, and he talked about it in that first article that I showed of his when he was asked about that, about how that affects how he writes battles, and his point was, well, I think it affects how veterans view combat, view going into it and after it. And something I've heard a lot of people say is that your focus is very narrow. So I can't tell you about the Battle of the Bulge. I can just tell you about my little tiny corner of it. So he's trying to give you a sense of what is going on, because if you're following along behind someone's eyes, you're not going to see that. You can't see the whole battle. For instance, I brought up the Sean Ryan show is a newer one I found. He's a former SEAL and he has a podcast, and he has a lot of former operators on, but also other people. We'll actually bring him up when we talk about Epstein next week, because he has a 3-hour interview for someone who wrote a book on it. Um, but he was interviewing a former Delta operator who had gotten in just before Mogadishu and then got out sometime during the War on Terror. So he spanned that whole generation, and he made the point that for anyone who's seen the movie, you know that two Black Hawks get shot down. Well, he said that I didn't know that a second one had been shot down until the next day, because that was how confined his vision was, because he was busy trying to stay alive in what was going on here. And so I suspect that's part of why and how Jordan writes battles, is to give you a sense of what was going on more than a play by play, because you won't get a play by play, if that makes sense.
Until you get to Sanderson and Matt later. But
Don't cross that bridge when we get there. Um,
okay, so we get to the meeting and I'm trying to decide why this went the way it did because Semirage is the protagonist here. Antagonist, excuse me, antagonist here. And she should have known there would have been men channeling.
yes, but I think what I suspect what the plan was to get Rand close, literally physically close, because this is a negotiation between the dragon and the daughter of the Nine Moons, in
And slap the cuffs on him and then use him against the other
and then
guys.
use him against the others, or force them to retreat because they don't want to hurt Rand. So I suspect that what happened here was you know, the fecal matter has hit the rotating blades. And so now it's attack. We have to improvise. It's, kill or be killed, capture or be captured, is what once that mirror of mist has been pricked, um, with that inverted weave, that she's going to know. She knows all about inverted weaves and masking and things. So she has to suspect that there some, if not all of these women can channel, and they're they're masking themselves or could be. But the reason fireballs start flying is because the the ruse is up. And so there's no point in trying to follow through with the plan when they know that that is not who that is. Um, but to Rand, now this is kind of a big deal here, especially setting up for how dark Rand is going to get in the next book, which is he's got his hand blown off, and all he says is, I'll have to learn the sword all over again." Bashir nodded. He just nods. Yep. Um, Min is not happy. "I'll have to work out a new ways of doing everything." "You must be in shock," Nynaeve said slowly. "You've just suffered a grievous injury, Rand. Maybe you'd better lie down." He's not in shock," Min said sadly. Um, I, I, I mean, it's so simple yet so poignant. Of this is his girl. This is his main girl. She clearly loves him. She's bonded to him, and what else can she be but sad that he's lost his arm. He lost a hand, but there's nothing to do about it, so he's left it behind already, which isn't good. Um,
Yeah, because in the female mind, that could be you too.
that's a good point. I
You
hadn't
know,
thought about it
I
in that
I lost
context.
Avienda. Oh, okay. We'll mourn later. The last battle's coming. I
Hmm.
lost Min. Oh, we'll mourn later. Last battle's coming.
I
You're
mean,
you if that could happen to a piece of your body, what could happen to me as your lover?
Bill Burr has this great bit on this is why men die when they're 50 because they have to shove all that stuff down because we die when we're 50 because we can't let ourselves admit a puppy is cute. Um,
Oh,
and,
you're
and
allowed to admit a puppy's cute because that gets you laid, by the way.
but
But
that's the hyperbole. He's
yeah.
making the real point, and Rand is now living hyperbole because that's what he's doing. And this is why I spent so long talking about embracing the pain with Egwene, because she managed to figure it out. Rand still hasn't learned it, and he needs to, because you've got to you've got to feel those feelings. You don't dwell on them. You don't let them consume you or overcome you, but you can't just shove them down. You have to experience it and then let it go. And Rand can't do that. Um, well, he won't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to him that is weakness, and he's busy doing such important things, he can't risk that sign of weakness to others, but then also that internal weakness of not being able to focus on what he needs to focus on because of the emotional pain.
Sorry, I just realized when I was messing with my camera earlier, I had accidentally unplugged the laptop.
Oh.
And I just happened to look at the battery signal and I'm like, this thing's almost out. So, uh, yeah. This is why this laptop never leaves this office, is because the battery is so old on it
Mm.
that I have to keep it plugged in all the time. Uh, but no, you're absolutely right. Rand is in that spot of I need to be hard, which is part of the story arc with him, the whole connection. We had a prophecy in one of the previous books, right? Where he is one with the land, and
Mm-hmm.
when he does this, he does that, and the land does this and he does that. Right now it's cold, right? Winter's Heart was the last book, right? It's cold, it's hard, it's ice, it's solid form, and we're at the turning point of, can he melt that ice or does he stay frozen?
And
And losing an arm and just being able to say, nah, okay, we're good. That's still ice.
yes,
Yeah.
because that's no small thing. I mean that there is a reason phantom limb pain is a thing because it is not a small thing to lose
Well,
even
he
a
even
finger.
says in his own head here, I can still feel my hand.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how can you be sure? Cadsuin demanded. I love that it's Simmerhaj who answers. She's about to explain how Rand can be sure, but as she puts it, he's insane. So this is
Mhm.
page 592, and
Which is funny because we just had this big talk in our last one. Is it actually insane if the voice is
mhm,
real? And she just gives a soliloquy of, yeah, it is. The voice is real, but it's still insane.
mhm. Well, but I think more importantly to Rand is what he thinks immediately after Simmerhaj gets done talking, which is, were they looking at him differently? Logain's face was a carved mask, unreadable. Bashir looked as though he still could not believe. Nynaeve's mouth hung open and her eyes were wide. The bond, for a long moment, the bond was full of numbness. If Min turned away from him, he did not know whether he could stand it. Um, it's it's insane because he's letting himself be driven insane with worry over what does this mean for everyone who's looking at me? What does this mean for everyone who follows me?
Well, there's some insight here too, because, and I didn't even think about it till we were talking about this chapter. We get inside Logain's head several times, and he never has a voice.
That's a good point.
We never get inside Narishma's head, so we don't know. But by his reaction here, there's no voice.
I don't. That's a good. I'm trying to think. I don't know that we ever get. I don't know if we're ever told by anyone how the madness manifests in Logain. And he's old enough and he's been channeling long enough. He should have some degree of the madness.
No, we actually get that he's pretty freaking solid.
Hmm.
Even when he was gentled, he had to have some degree of mental fortitude to have not killed himself
You
during
know.
that time.
Yeah.
And do we ever get inside Tame's head? Taim's head?
I don't think so, but we know why he's protected. You should know by this point why he's
Yeah, well,
protected from
but
the
even in
Tate.
the beginning though, he wasn't protected though.
Hmm.
When he was leading armies against Aldea, he wasn't
Well,
protected.
we're not actually sure how long he's been a baddie, so
Mm.
that I don't think we're ever told. Um, I get the sense that it's been a while. That he's been acting for the bad guys for a while.
Well, he would have had to been cool with Ishi because up until Eye of the World, nobody but Ishi could have any impact.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah. So if we get, we'll look forward. We'll look as we go through for clues on that. Uh, but it's still to me an interesting discussion. The Semiraj acknowledging, like I said in our previous discussion, that it should be Grendel talking about this,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
she acknowledges that the voice is real and that it's actually Lews Therin. And to me, crazy, the definition of crazy, the definition of insanity is a detachment from reality. How far from our mutual perception of reality are you? And everybody's a little different because we perceive things a little differently, but we have a collective perception that is what we call objective reality. And how far are you from that is what determines whether you're insane or not. If the voice is real, to me, that's the opposite of insanity.
Just
Now,
thinking about it here, though.
end results could be the same, but shooting a gun versus pointing a gun and shooting it at somebody versus just kind of shooting it up in the air and it hits somebody. Those are those are the same result from two different actions, right? And insanity, even though yeah, he goes crazy or he, not let me pick my words. He does bad things based on this thing versus the fact that it's real or not. It's to me it's a fine line between insanity versus just reactionary.
Well, so thinking about it here while you're talking about it, and I'm looking down at the paragraph where Simmerhaj explains this, and um, clearly he is hearing Lews Theron's voice. It makes no difference that his voice is real, however. In fact, that makes his situation worse. Even Grendel usually failed to achieve reintegration with someone who heard a real voice. So the terminology there makes me think, I think I know why that would be. That uh if if you're hearing a voice in your head, well, there's kind of a chicken and egg thing here because for us, if people who hear voices are paranoid schizophrenics, and that is why they hear the voice. It's not the voice that makes them paranoid schizophrenic, right? If I understand it properly. Um, so everyone has an internal dialogue
Mm-hmm.
to some degree or another because as you're trying to navigate the world and think through possibilities and probabilities, you have an internal dialogue. Well, now imagine if that dialogue is literally with another person and it's someone who's arguing with you. It's not your own voice saying, "Hey, you shouldn't do that." It's someone raving at you. It's someone yelling at a totally separate voice. With enough time, I can see how that would drive you crazy. The stress of it would drive you crazy. The disruption of your own internal monologue, and and you know, staying on the paranoid schizophrenic analogy here, the drugs to get the craziness to go down, but then also therapy to these voices aren't real. It's your own voice. It's reintegrating. It's hey, these are outside voices. You need to, you know, recognize the parts of you that are you. The idea that what Grendel was doing was reintegration, was bringing those two voices into one so it's the same thing. So I can see how that would drive someone crazy. Um, and especially as she says, the descent into madness could be abrupt. The stress, the stress, the stress, the stress until finally you snap.
Yeah, this might be one we explore deeper as we go along, but there's a discussion with it's not the last one that you probably listened to, the What Can We Agree On with Sam Harris and
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson, but the time before that they talked about, and Harris was at his best during this conversation. And he was talking about internal dialogue and the difference between consciousness and perception because they're two different things, but they integrate together. So we all kind of think of them as the same thing. And the internal dialogue that we all do have can be contradictory to the world around us. And that's actually an avenue to what you talked about, schizophrenia and paranoia and uh the worst manifestations of that. But again, this is where we bring a metaphysic of the soul as well. So our internal dialogue is our brain telling us things that it doesn't want to hear right now. Whereas in this world, we have the brain of the pattern that the string of the pattern that is me is telling me things. And it, I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna have to go to the end of the book on this one. I think Sanderson fumbles this one because I
Mm-hmm.
think Jordan is setting something great up here mentally,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think we.
Setting up the very end of the book. Is that what you mean? The very end
Yeah,
of the series?
very end of the series, and I
Mm-hmm.
I, I think the crossing of the streams and all of those things are all supposed to play into this, and then we get this little thing at the end that kind of resolves it, but it doesn't without the depth that we're getting right here.
Mm-hmm. Moving along, as we've talked
I,
about
I, I actually think, and we're gonna get some involvement, but I don't think I actually think The main antagonist in the entire series is Ishii. That's for sure. Ishii in his two different forms. But I think Grendel was supposed to be
It,
the
a bigger
the,
part of that.
a bigger part of that. I think she was supposed to be the second in uh messing up Rand.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, I think we do have a flipping moment with him coming. Spoiler alert, whatever. We do have a flipping moment, or else we don't have an end to the book. I think Shio was supposed to be the person that brought him to the edge of that flipping moment, and then he overcomes that, and then he can fight the final battle. And you get a little bit of that, but I don't think it's what Jordan intended, unless he couldn't figure out how to end it either.
Yeah, maybe.
There's
Yeah.
always that. We're still waiting for the completion of Game of Thrones, but
Yeah, I was about to say at least he gave us an ending.
yeah.
The poor book readers of Game of Thrones are never going to get it, I'm convinced. Um anyway, I love the where is it? Cadson when it says you're very calm for a prisoner rather than deny the charge, you give evidence against yourself. Simra shifted that cold smile from Rand to Cadson. Why should I deny myself? Pride dripped from every word. I am Simir Haj. And then, people freak out. Uh anyway, that's all I got for that. And then we suddenly shift back to Mat.
Yes, and this is where I have my note. So we get back to Mat and see what I wrote here. So before spoilers here, this is something I didn't notice till we were talking about it. We get back to Mat and we get the scene where they're setting up and in front of Tuan, he talks about the real goal of his plan,
Hmm.
which is not to take out Shanshan. The real goal of his plan is to open the gap so he can get through and get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people have to die in the process, but this is the real goal of the process of the plan, and it moves her to some degree because she's like, "Oh my gosh, I something else I didn't expect from this man. I thought he was." We go back to the end of the last Mat section where they're like, "Oh, he's bringing us a war."
Mm-hmm.
He's not bringing them a war. They were wrong. He's trying to get away.
Yeah.
He is bringing the battle to get away, not to bring a war. So everybody was wrong, and this is where there are no accidents with Robert Jordan. He's the snake. He doesn't bite unless he has to, and then he goes away. And he said, "Let the snake go because it just wants to go away."
That's a good point.
He is only doing as much as he can to get through the gap.
Well, and he epitomizes. Have you read Sun Tzu? Um,
Yeah,
something
I've had it up on my
I
board
I
several
thought so.
times. Yeah.
So Sun Tzu says it several times, and this has been reiterated down through history, even by people who didn't know who that Sun Tzu was, which is, as Matt says on the bottom of page 595, a beautiful battle is one you don't have to fight. And that was Sun Tzu's contention. And
I've
you
got the
actually,
regular version and the pocket version.
yep. So to Matt, the best battle is the one you don't have to fight, where you maneuver your enemy into where you want them, and you achieve your result without having to expend lives. And not only does he say that, but he's demonstrating that.
Well, and he does it. We want to put the best. We want to put the lipstick on the pig here, though. He does it in a way where he's still the venomous snake and he still bites
Yes.
because he just killed a lot of people
Oh yeah.
very
Yeah.
quickly and very decisively.
Well, then at the end of it, uh, who is this? Is it Teslin that says we have to give aid to the wounded? The rules of war. The chivalry, courtesy, conduct of war demands it. And Matt just says this is a new kind of war, which again, he's being hard, but for a purpose. It's just like we started
If we
off.
stay and give aid, more people will die.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's going back to where we started complaining about Egwene. Is that's what Brian was trying to tell her. Is Brian wanted open up gateways, put us right in the tower grounds. We will storm the tower. Yes, people will die, but the other option is that I lay siege to Tar Valon, and a lot of people are going to suffer, and maybe in the end more people die, and we still have to assault. So now it's ugly, it's bloody, people die, but it's over. It's a quick cut versus twiddling our thumbs. And now, to Egwene's credit, she did have a plan for how a siege could work more effectively, but Brian wasn't wrong that it's not going to be pleasant no matter how we do it. So let's make it the least bad we can.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the old rip the band-aid
Yes.
versus pull it off slowly, you know?
It if I stop to give aid to the wounded, I could potentially lose my entire army. Would be what because the entire army is cut off in enemy territory and surrounded by way more people than I have. So it's kill these people or let literally my entire army be you know killed and captured.
And
Um,
again, he impresses Tuan because
why toy? You are being masterful again. When he's just in the moment of give over both of you. I'm in no mood to listen to the pair of you trying to jab each other with needles.
well, no,
Because
but it's her murmuring under his breath, a lion can have no mercy.
mm,
She wants the lion.
yeah,
She doesn't want some soft uh squishy dude that would be Tylen's pet, you know?
hmm hmm
And then we get back to Perrin, and I didn't read that part yet. But
and now we get the actual assault on Malden.
yeah.
But we've been jabbering for a while. That seems like a good place to stop
No,
because
that's a great stopping place because I'm not studied up after that, actually.
well,
So
and we get the finally the culmination of the Perrin Fail Roland storyline comes to a head, and so I assume we're gonna have a fair bit to say on that, more so than really the actual chapter itself.
all right. So if you are reading for the first time, we're about to go into spoilers. I got a couple here. Uh
Yeah.
so go away if you haven't read the whole thing. Uh, my first note was Egwene as a parallel to the Queen of Manatharin, and I think Scott brought this up before that maybe Egwene was her rebooted
Mhm.
as well, and I think that what we see in the end of the series is actually very parallel to what happened, right? She
I had
blew,
not thought about that
yeah,
before.
she
Yeah.
blew herself up to save Manatharin, and Egwene blows herself up to save the the people in the last battle. So,
That's a good point. Not just, at least she goes out like a champ. There were a lot, much like with the back and forth with the Mandrid that we've complained about, there was a lot of back and forth and up and down that could have been trimmed down to make it more impactful, I think. But in the end, not only does she save a big chunk of people in the last battle because she's going head to head with Taim and the new Dreadlords and the Black Ajah, she literally saves reality because they're flinging so much balefire that she's starting to see literal cracks in the world. So the Dark One is, I think unbeknownst to his followers who are just, you know, selfish psychos, he's getting what he wants, which is unraveling realities. You guys survived?
I've been
Ah,
saving that one. Like I said, I've got so many for the last couple books
I
that
know.
it's just oh
We may have to have we may have to have several epilogue episodes just talking about the series as a whole. And also there's so much that happens at the end there to think about and talk about and try and figure out, that we may end up doing several shorter epilogue episodes. I like the Egwene thing though. I hadn't even thought of that. I feel like a dummy. since I'm more her advocate than anyone else here, that is a great arc for that parallel of the thought from early on that maybe she's the rebirth of the last queen of Manetheren, and here she goes out in a very similar manner.
Yeah, the problem is choosing the right one for that episode because there's just so many.
So okay, so that leads me to my spoiler talk, which I wanted to
Yeah,
mention.
Egwene's fault when Tower comes back together is what I wrote. Yeah.
The way she treats Sawan, especially, and Brine, of when they pull her out of the tower, you were literally dying, lady. And and it had to come to a head at some point. A decision had to be made eventually. And this is where she's being way too feminine, going back to where we started, of not making a decision. Your coalition building is awesome. The way you turn enemies into admirers is a phenomenal climax to a character arc. But then it is partially, I won't say ruined, but deflated when she's so bitchy to Sawan for rescuing her. You had channeled so much you were passing out. You had channeled so much you didn't know what was going on when they were literally picking you up and taking you out. You were that far gone. Had they left you, who the heck knows what would have happened to you? At some point, a decision had to be made, and and it was made, and it was, if not the right decision, at least the least bad, at least a decision that made perfect sense to everyone at the time. You're just being bitchy because it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. Because I think in her head, as you've talked about, with as with Tuan gets turned on her head there because, wait, who the heck is this guy? I thought I had him figured out. But to her credit, she's quiet and attentive and you know thinking as she's learning, learn gathering all this new information and reevaluating what she had thought. I think Egwene had done a similar thing of constructing, I'm going to turn the tower so to my side that they are going to raise me up and announce and bring Elida down and say, we've had enough of you. And the tower's just going to be reunited almost like by magic, something out of a Gleeman's tale. I think she had built this up in her mind that this is the way it was going to happen. And now that she'd been pulled out of the tower, she suddenly becomes certain that it's all crap now. It ends up working out perfectly, but she is so, I think, so convinced that her way now isn't going to happen. So now what will happen will be terrible.
Well, and I think that's the strength of Jordan is he gives us insight into people's heads, but then also shows us how reality plays out versus expectation.
Well, and this is where
I
I
mean,
do.
you parallel Egwene and Rand. That's one of the that's
Yes.
the actual big storyline with Rand is he thinks things should go a certain way, but reality keeps
Yeah.
bringing him back to the real world. Uh, Perrin is another example. Perrin is this whole slog that we're having to go through is because he thought he had exactly what should be, which is him and Fail doing their thing as a married couple, as things should be. And the Shido come in and throw it all on its head. And he was just gonna ride to the last battle with her at his side, and now everything's changed, and he couldn't cope with it.
Yeah. And and again, the reason it annoys us is because he'd already learned these lessons. I mean, that was basically the lesson of the Shadow Rising is he expected that going back to Emmons Field, this is what was going to happen. To his credit, he was able to, when it didn't happen that way, when reality was different, he adapted and then he eventually got to the point of, you know what, this wasn't so bad. You know what, this worked out okay. You know what, Fail, you were right in a lot of ways of this is kind of the way it had to be, and this is who I am now as the leader of these people. Um, and that's uh where the Egwene story arc is less satisfying is I wouldn't have minded if she was so bitchy at Suwan because she thinks everything's fallen apart now. She thinks Swan and Brian have pulled the rug out from under her. But then after the fact, if she goes, you know what, Swan, it worked out. You know, I'm sorry I was bitchy at you. It worked out. Everything's okay now. She never has that moment.
Well, the opposite of Egwene is humble. And I think that's where people like me and Scott kind of want to go away from her.
Mm-hmm.
When first read through, and if you just watch the series, you get that impression about Nynaeve. And I think the love that we've started to as we get older gain towards her is, again, she's kind of the Mat parallel, where she wants things to be a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
but her actions are dictated by how things actually are. And Egwene is the opposite. She says she's open-minded, but her actions are very dictatorial.
You know, an interesting thought occurs to me that I think this may be why Mat is such a fan favorite because he never has to have that moment. Because as Tuan points out, and as we talked about, he is who he is in any situation.
No, he does. He does have to have that moment. It's how he handles it that people love him. He is fated to be married to the daughter of the Nine Moons. He is the opposite of Rand and Egwene. Rand and Egwene are trying to make their fate happen. Rand, or not Rand, Mat knows his fate. And he is trying everything he can to be his own person. It's the opposite. It's the complete opposite.
No, I mean that he's never he is trying to dodge that particular fate for sure. But
Well, it's not
he
that he's trying to dodge a fate. He's just trying to be him in the process.
but in that process, he is never angry, bitter, shaking his fist at the sky, shaking his fist at God, shaking his fist at the pattern, and saying this sucks, and then never has to have that Perrin moment of realization of okay, I was wrong, because it's not that he does everything right; it's that he is able to be himself in any situation and adapt to any situation so that he doesn't have to so that after the fact there's not a point where he has to apologize to someone because he didn't do anything wrong. Even if he didn't make the right decision, he didn't do anything wrong, as it
Well, he's
were.
the person that never says always and never.
Mm,
Because if you say always and never, you're going to be wrong. You say most times, or this usually happens,
that's a good point.
you can always, you're just giving probabilities. If you say 99% of the time, this is what happens, you always leave room for that 1%, that 1% that things can go wrong. That's why the old everybody, what's the guy who does the projections for elections? Nate Silver?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Numbers
he
guy.
was like 25% chance Trump wins, and everybody gives him they're like, "Oh, he's so horrible because he thought Hillary was going to win." And he's like,
That was
"Well,
way higher than anyone else.
yeah, 25% is a pretty big chunk of time, pretty big chunk of area to hit, right?" So he was actually pretty dang accurate.
Everyone else was saying 0 to 1%. Yeah. Were there any other spoiler notes that we had there? Okay,
Those are the two I wrote down. So
that's what I thought. Yeah. So we're think we can finish this next time. I suspect we can because again, like pretty the end of every book, there's a lot of action about to start happening, and we
mhm.
we typically move past that unless there's something of particular note, and it's more about how the characters react and what they do about it than the actual how to of it. So I'm optimistic we can get through the end of this um next time. All right. Well, we will see you next time.
Yeah, Wednesday, what do we have on the docket?
We have some Epstein stuff to talk. We were going to talk about it this week, and
We
you
wanted to
we
marinate. Yeah.
yeah, we had some other stuff to talk about, and you said, you know what, let's let it marinate and see what happens. And there was some other stuff that kind of popped up that made me go, hmm. Specifically, the Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Kimmel silliness.
See,
that
I had known about that for a long time.
I
And
hadn't heard about it until
yeah, when
this
you texted
this
me, I was
week.
like, "Oh, you're behind the curve on that one." So there's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
things I'm behind the curve on. But also I wanted to talk the medical system issues that we were talking about with that graphic I brought up to you with admin
Hmm, hmm.
and stuff. So that I think is an important conversation. So
I think there's actually a connection there to between my thoughts on Epstein and that. It will
there
make for an
definitely is
interesting
because there's a
parallel.
money trail, right?
Mhm.
You know, and if we know anything, money trail is a big part of the Epstein thing.
Oh,
Especially since a lot of the insights we're getting is from a Goldman Sachs kind of
money
lawsuit.
and
So
power, the same thing we talk about when we talk about this is money and power, and look what it does, and the evil it allows to manifest.
yeah, look up Greta Thunberg's net worth. That's all you need to know.
Hmm. All right. Well, for those who want the fun, we will see y'all Friday. Otherwise, we'll see you Wednesday for some painful fun.
All right. Talk to you later.